You are who you choose to be.
In one of those infuriating twists of storytelling, simply having sad moments in your story will not make your audience burst into tears. In fact, this approach can actually backfire and turn the audience against you. To make your audience cry, you have to get 3 very important things just right. An audience character connection is a must because sad things don't create sadness just by themselves. The person those sad things happen to is what actually matters. You could watch a news story about 100 people dying in an earthquake on the other side of the world and feel nothing. But if somebody you loved died, you wouldn't eat for a week. In objective terms, it's 1 life versus 100. But in emotional terms, the loss of 1 life still hurts you more because it's somebody you know and love. Tragedy is just background noise until it happens to you or to somebody you care about. This principle applies to everything, especially stories. We don't feel anything when we see our heroes slaughtering hundreds of henchmen. These poor henchmen are human beings who are usually just doing their jobs. They have hopes and dreams just like you. They have dogs that love them, mothers who worry about them, and landlords who rely on their rent checks. Their deaths are objectively sad, but we simply don't care because we don't like them. Human empathy is funny like that. We only really care about bad things when they happen to people we like. So, to make an audience cry, you first have to make that audience care deeply about your characters. The audience has to root for them, laugh with them, and then cry with them. The problem is that building that type of audience character connection takes time. And because of the time limitations in a medium like a movie, writers are often tempted to speedrun the process with shortcuts. This only works in 1% of attempts. In the remaining 99% of attempts, speedrunning an audience character connection so you can have a sad moment fails miserably, and then ruins the entire movie. So how do you pull it off? You already know that an audience will only like your character if that character is relatable. He has to be a good person, but not too good. Even Superman has kryptonite as a weakness. If he was an unbeatable god, his story would be completely uninteresting because there would be no struggle. All people have flaws, and so should your character. If he is too perfect, he becomes unrelatable. But if he is too flawed, he becomes despicable. A generally good person with a few flaws who fights those flaws in order to become a better person while chasing an admirable or selfless goal is usually the most likable character archetype. And it goes without saying, the more time the audience spends with your character, the better. It deepens the connection and makes that big tearjerker moment you have planned so much more impactful. But if you need to speedrun this connection building process and have a tear-inducing moment early in your story, Up is the best example of exactly what to do and how to do it. Now, even though Up successfully speedran its audience character connection for a big tearful moment, it still needed 10 minutes of solid build-up before delivering the devastating blow. Up had to show us Carl and Ellie's relationship starting when they were children, bonding over their shared love of adventure. It's only after this setup that Up launches into its famous montage, but this montage still focuses on strengthening the emotional connection between the audience and the characters. We see Carl and Ellie getting married. We see their happy time together as newlyweds, and we see them painting a nursery as they prepare for their baby. Then we see their sadness after they lose the baby. Up then shows Carl and Ellie recovering from losing the baby and living happily again. We see Carl and Ellie saving up for their dream childhood trip to South America, but they have to keep digging into their savings for emergencies like a burst tire and a tree crashing into their roof. These ups and downs, their relatable dream of adventure, and their admirably deep love for each other are what make Carl and Ellie likable. It's also what makes the ending of the montage so devastating. Up shows us Carl and Ellie growing old, and finally, Ellie dies without ever taking that dream trip to South America with her husband because life got in the way. That's when we finally see Carl in the church, broken. Up spends 11% of its runtime ramping up to this one moment, and it's devastating. The framing of the shots, the color saturation, and the haunting music that plays all through the montage definitely help in amplifying the sadness. But without the buildup and the audience character connection, that scene would never have made people cry the way it did. Cinematic tricks like music can definitely help drive home the emotional point of a scene, but no amount of music can save a poorly written scene. Up didn't just kill off Ellie in the first minute and tell us, "This guy lost his wife, please cry." Up showed us why Ellie, in particular, was a wife worth crying over by making us like her first. You cannot skip this step. If you're planning any sad moments, you have to build that connection between the audience and your character. If you have randos that the audience doesn't care about dying right, left, and center, that is not sad. It's just gore. This is also what the Iron Giant gets right. The film wastes no time in introducing us to Hogarth Hughes, a curious, slightly awkward kid in 1950s America who desperately wants adventure. Within minutes, we connect with him. He's a little outcast at school who gets bullied, lost his dad, and finds comfort in exploring. He's really smart as well. We like him because he's earnest, resourceful, and a little mischievous. Then we meet the Iron Giant. The connection isn't built through long backstory, but through shared experiences. Hogarth feeds him scrap metal, he builds the foundation of the giant, explaining him humanity and the concept of an inner soul, essentially teaching the giant right from wrong and that he has either the potential for evil destruction and chaos or the potential for peace, friendship, rebuilding. Every small moment is quietly laying bricks in the emotional wall the ending will eventually smash through. By the time the climax arrives, when the giant chooses to sacrifice himself, whispering, "Superman," we're already invested. We care, not because he's a giant robot in danger, but because he's Hogarth's friend. A robot built for destruction, but with a heart of gold. The story earns our tears by making the giant more than a machine. It makes him someone we'd want to protect too. This is exactly the same principle Up uses, just compressed differently. Nevertheless, there are a lot of writers who believe they have found a clever loophole. Instead of using on-screen relationships to build an audience-character connection, they skip that step entirely and just exploit the pre-existing personal relationships the audience already has. This is where we get the manufactured tragedy. The most common type of manufactured tragedy in storytelling is the dead parent. Everybody has parents, and most people like their parents. So if you kill your character's parents, the audience will feel sorry for him and cry because they will be imagining the trauma of losing their own parents, right? Well, not really. Manufactured tragedies tend to have very mixed results. They can either speedrun the connection building process, or they can break your story. It's all in the implementation. In superhero stories, dead or absent parents have become a requirement. Pretty much every superhero you can think of is an orphan. Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, and Iron Man are the most prominent.
Turns out we have a lot in common.
You can see the same trend in the Star Wars universe and even in Disney princess movies. It doesn't matter whether you are Luke Skywalker, Cinderella, Snow White, or Bambi. Living parents are usually a big no. If the parents are alive at the beginning of the movie, they're definitely going to die by the 10th minute. Now, a lot of stories use this technique because killing off the parents is the easiest way to buy sympathy for your character. The problem is that when you introduce parents just so you can kill them, it can backfire and turn the audience against you. The minute your audience feels like it's getting emotionally manipulated, it's over. So, how do you prevent audience backlash when manufacturing a tragedy? The Good Dinosaur is the perfect example of what not to do. In The Good Dinosaur, the hero's father sacrifices his life to save his son. It's supposed to be this very sad and very touching moment, but it just falls flat because the emotional manipulation is too obvious. The Lion King also did the same thing. It had a father sacrificing himself to save his son. But the Lion King scene didn't feel manipulative. It was a manufactured tragedy that the audience actually liked. So, what is the difference between a successful manufactured tragedy and an annoying failure? It's the inclusion of the second ingredient that makes an audience cry. The Lion King had it, and The Good Dinosaur didn't. Let's break down the two scenes and see where The Good Dinosaur failed. In The Lion King, Scar tells his nephew, Simba, to wait for his father in the middle of a valley. Simba doesn't know that his uncle is lying to him. He also doesn't know that there is a herd of wildebeests grazing at the mouth of the valley. As soon as Scar is clear of the valley, he signals the hyenas to spook the wildebeests. The wildebeests start a stampede, and Simba is trapped. Scar then tells his brother Mufasa that his son is trapped in a valley full of stampeding wildebeests. Mufasa braves the stampede to rescue his son, and he succeeds. He even manages to almost save himself, but not quite. He gets stuck on the walls of the valley.
Scar! Brother, help me!
Scar doesn't help, obviously. He set up the whole stampede to kill his brother so he could become king.
Long live the king.
Scar throws Mufasa back into the valley, and Mufasa is trampled to death by the wildebeests. This scene hits you like a ton of bricks. It works. Now, let us look at how The Good Dinosaur bungled up the death of its hero's father. In the universe of The Good Dinosaur, the dinosaurs never went extinct. They run the world. Humans, on the other hand, are just pests who steal food from the dinosaurs. Our hero, Arlo's father, sets up a trap and it catches the human boy who has been stealing food from them. Instead of killing the boy, like his father instructed, Arlo lets the boy go. Daddy is not happy.
Come on. We're gonna finish your job right now.
So the father takes his son out to track down the human boy. They follow the boy's tracks along the river. The problem is that there is a rainstorm. The rain actually started falling as they were leaving home, but the dad, Henry, insisted on leaving anyway. This is the same dad who had said this just a few minutes earlier.
The river's not something to mess around with there, Arlo. Be careful.
But because Henry is angry at his son for letting the human boy go, he ignores his own advice, ignores the rainstorm, and even ignores the rising water levels in the river. He keeps pushing Arlo until Arlo breaks one of his legs trying to keep up. This is also when Henry realizes he is screwed up.
I think we went far enough today. Storm's getting worse. Let's get you home.
By then, it's too late. A massive wall of floodwater is barreling down the river. Henry manages to push his son onto higher ground, but he can't save himself in time. The water sweeps him away. This scene is sad as well, but it doesn't hit like Mufasa's scene in The Lion King. Henry is portrayed as this perfect dad who paid the ultimate price to save his son. But when you look at it, the only reason Arlo was ever in danger in the first place is because his father put him in danger. Henry should never have taken his son out by the river during a rainstorm. Compare this to Mufasa. Mufasa never put his son in danger. The reason why Mufasa's scene is so heartbreaking is because of the injustice of it all. Mufasa didn't deserve what happened to him, but Henry kinda did. Henry clearly knew better than to go out along the river in a rainstorm, but he went anyway, and even took his son with him. The movie portrays Henry as this Mufasa-level perfect dad, and he was until the writers screwed up his death. They wanted Henry dead for sympathy points, and they chose the easiest method available instead of thinking up a method that wouldn't leave Henry looking like he got what he deserved. Injustice is the most important thing to include when manufacturing tragedies. It's the second ingredient in creating sad moments. Your victims cannot be fucking around and finding out. They need to be the blameless victims of injustice. Without injustice, the tearful moments in your story are going to fall flat or even feel a little manipulative. The saddest moments in any story usually come from injustice, and the grave injustices are usually perpetrated by somebody. Think of the scene in Wreck-It Ralph where Ralph betrays Vanellope and wrecks her cart. Think of events like the execution of Ned Stark or the Red Wedding. Bad things happening to good people break an audience's heart every time. That's how you get those tears. But we're not done. There is still one last element that makes sadness so much sadder and opens the floodgates for tears: emotional contrast. Yes, you can definitely make your audience cry with just sadness on top of sadness and more sadness. But that audience is going to be a hell of a lot smaller than if your story was interspersed with happy moments. Stories with a happy ending are way more popular than depressing compilations of human misery with no light at the end of the tunnel. A sad moment in an ocean of sadness is like a black dot on a black wall. Even if it is blacker than everything else around, it still won't stand out. But if that black dot is on a white wall, it becomes unmissable. Making your audience cry works the same way. You need the emotional contrast between happy moments and sad ones. When all you have is a compilation of sad moments, your story becomes intolerable, and the audience might just abandon it instead of finishing it. So, how do you create this emotional contrast? We have two examples. The first is an excellent, or more accurately, a terrible example of what not to do: Lightyear. The Lightyear story starts off somewhat sad. Buzz crashes his spaceship on an alien planet, and the ship's engine is wrecked. Buzz and his entire crew are trapped on this alien planet with deadly vines that attack people. The only way out is to rebuild the engine and recreate the fuel power in it. It's an incredibly difficult task. It takes them a whole year before they're even ready for a first test flight.
A year of work for a 4-minute flight. Isn't that something?
That test flight doesn't work. And worse, time dilation actually makes Buzz age slower than his crewmates. While he is out in space, he only ages 4 minutes. But his crewmates on the alien planet age 4 years. But the people keep trying. Buzz goes on test flight after test flight without any success. From the math in the film, it takes Buzz a literal 89 years to finally get it right. Of course, by then, everybody from Buzz's original crew is already dead. The crew members got married and had children on the alien planet. Those children also got married and had their own children. And those grandchildren are in their 20s by the time Buzz succeeds. But Buzz himself has barely aged because of time dilation. Fantasy physics. All of this is supposed to be incredibly sad, but Lightyear never even shows us any of it. The only other person we ever see is Alicia, Buzz's best friend, and we don't even get to see her perspective on things. Lightyear only uses Alicia to show the passage of time every time Buzz returns from a failed test flight. She is getting married, she has a kid, the kid is graduating college, the kid is getting married now, the kid has his own kid, and now Alicia is dead. Her only role in the story is to be a literal human clock. We don't get to see how she and anybody else feel about getting trapped on a deadly alien planet. We don't get to see how they feel about Buzz, who crashed their ship and got them stuck in the first place. We never get to see how they feel about growing old and watching their children grow old, while Buzz remains young and healthy. There are so many opportunities for emotional contrast, but Lightyear never uses a single one of them. The movie keeps all its focus on Buzz, and Buzz only spends 2 seconds feeling bad about crashing the spaceship and getting his crew stranded. The The rest of the movie is just a compilation of Buzz going on test flights while everybody else around him grows old and dies. All we know is that Buzz wants to have a successful test flight so he can go home. But we never get to see home either. We never get to see what he has lost, what he is missing. This is another lost opportunity for emotional contrast. And even when Buzz eventually succeeds in testing a stable fuel that can take the crew's children and grandchildren home after 89 years, there is no reckoning. There is no addressing the emotional elephant in the room. The writers choose to keep Buzz busy fighting his evil future self. Evil future Buzz has traveled back in time to steal the fuel that past Buzz has been perfecting for the past 89 years. Yes, somebody actually came up with that plot point. The fight against his future self occupies Buzz until the end of the movie. He defeats his evil future self, but he loses the fuel, so he decides the alien planet is home anyway. This makes everything he actually did for the whole movie a complete waste of time. 89 years of people's lives just wasted. Buzz himself never feels the weight of wasting 89 years of his life because, from his perspective, he's only spent a couple of minutes in space. This makes the movie very hard to watch. The only emotion you feel when watching Lightyear is annoyance. I only sat through it so I could say all these nasty things about it, but I strongly recommend against torturing yourself with it. The better choice is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That is a movie that actually knows how to make you cry because it uses emotional contrast to amplify both happiness and sadness. Early in the movie, we see Miles Morales goofing around with his uncle Aaron. They're best friends who sneak around and spray graffiti on walls. When Miles later learns that the same uncle is actually the supervillain who has been hunting him and trying to kill him, we feel his heartbreak because we know what he's lost. If we had not seen all the happy moments between Miles and his uncle, the realization that the same uncle was trying to kill him would have had no emotional impact. It would be just another plot point. When Uncle Aaron corners Miles on a roof and is about to kill him, we feel Miles's fear. When his uncle spares him after Miles pulls down his mask, we share Miles's relief. And when Kingpin murders Uncle Aaron literally 2 seconds later, we mourn with Miles. This is the cool uncle he sneaked out of school just to hang out with. The same uncle who just spared his life. And because we have seen all this, watching him get murdered for the great crime of refusing to murder Miles breaks our collective hearts. That's how you use emotional contrast. The contrast between the happy moments and the sad ones makes the sad ones so much sadder. Without this emotional contrast, the sad moments will just blend into each other and make your story boring instead of impactful. Those are the 3 ingredients you need to make your audience cry: a strong audience character connection, injustice, and emotional contrast. The best writers use all 3 at once to maximize the sadness of sad moments. Before Game of Thrones went off the rails, it was perfect at this. Set up a character as this noble hero for a whole season, give him lots of cool moments, make everybody love him, then kill him off in an execution, assassination, or a wedding. Tears guaranteed. Game of Thrones actually started going down the rails when it stopped killing off fan-favorite characters in the last 3 seasons and started giving them plot armor instead. So as long as you don't do that, you'll be fine. If you want even more contrast and instead of making your audience cry, terrify the shit out of them, watch our video on that exact topic next.